Hi, all. So just picking up from where we just left off. So we just finished talking about how attention functions somewhat as a bottleneck, choosing selectively what passes on to higher level processing centers. But I left with this cliffhanger of, is this always the case? And there's this phenomenon, it's referred to as the cocktail party effect. And the basic scenario is, imagine you're in a room full of people and you're having a conversation, maybe with just one or two people. There's a lot of other conversations going on. Now, in the background, that all just sounds like chatter. So you can't really make out much of what's going on in any of these other conversations. Now, imagine that in one of those conversations, you hear some word, maybe someone says your name. All of a sudden, you're selectively tuned to that conversation. Why did someone just say your name? You want to know, for example, are people saying bad things about you? They also could just be talking about someone else that happens to have the same name as you. But the phenomenon here is that your brain tuned in to this conversation, even though you're perceiving it as just random chatter. And this is suggesting that perhaps all stimuli, so all this background noise is at some level being processed. Maybe it's not reaching quite a high threshold until, again, you hear something like your name, but it's being processed more than the bottleneck framework assumes, because in the bottleneck framework, all that irrelevant information is just completely filtered out. And so it could be that your sensory memory stores, so something visual or something auditory, is actually classifying stimuli based on how salient they are, how much they stand out. So we're going to switch gears a little bit now and talk a bit about a dual attentional stream theory of attention. And this just means that there are proposed to be two streams of attention or two types of attention. And these two types of attention are bottom up and top down. Bottom up is the allocation of attention that is driven by external factors. And this could be things like how salient are the stimuli, or how salient is a given stimulus in your environment. You're going to be drawn to that salient stimulus just because it stands out. So this is bottom-up attention, and this is in contrast to top-down attention. Top-down attention has more of a cognitive component to it, because this is internally directed, meaning it's occurring within you, and it's internally directed towards something that's going to help you accomplish a goal. So it's the allocation of attention based on things that you already know about from your previous experiences that will help you to achieve some goal. So let's take each of these types of attention in turn. So bottom-up attention is also sometimes referred to as exogenous attention. And all this means is this is attention that's occurring based on something that's outside of your body or outside of you. So it's being driven by stimuli in your environment. So it's also stimulus-dependent or stimulus-driven attention. This is an involuntary type of attention. Your brain is automatically drawn to salient stimuli in your environment. Salient meaning stimuli that stand out to you. And the attended object or objects, whatever it is that is receiving attention, is going to receive preferential processing by your brain, meaning your brain is going to prioritize processing that stimulus over other things in your environment. Now you can think this serves quite an evolutionary advantage. In fact, this is an evolutionarily older system of attention because it's useful in preparing the body's fight or flight response. So you can imagine if you were walking along and you saw this cute fella, well, this is actually a jaguar, it's not your normal house cat. So you definitely don't want to get close to this guy, and your bottom-up attention is helping to prepare your body because it's perceiving this very salient threat in your environment. So anytime a salient stimulus appears, your bottom-up attentional system is helping to prepare your body, for some reaction to that stimulus. And it's not always that it's preparing a fight or flight response, but evolutionarily that is a type of response that would be prepared based on this attentional system. Now, top-down attention is an endogenous or internal system of attention. So it's all occurring within your mind or in your brain. And this is goal-directed. So the outcome of this attentional system is that your brain wants to obtain some goal, or you want to obtain some goal, some desired outcome. So this is actually a voluntary system of attention because you are directing your attention to objects in your environment that will help you to obtain some outcome that you want to happen. Evolutionarily, this is newer than bottom-up attention. It involves more advanced cognitive processes, including working memory. So higher order processing is coming in play to bear on how you're going to go about obtaining an outcome. It's also referred to as sustained attention because your attention is being directed usually for a sustained period of time, for a longer period of time, to some object or some outcome. Now we talk about the time course of attention. That is, how long does it take to attend to objects or other things in your environment? It's usually pretty quick. However, bottom-up attention is occurring at a faster rate within a few milliseconds, and top-down attention takes about 100 to 300 milliseconds longer. Now, you might not think that 100 to 300 milliseconds is a lot of time. You couldn't even count that fast, of course, but it is a matter potentially of life or death when it comes to a predator, which is why your bottom-up attentional system, your evolutionarily older attentional system, is going to occur, it's going to happen more quickly. It's going to tick on quicker than your top-down system, but your top-down system is also slower because it's recruiting higher order cognitive processing that occurs in your prefrontal cortex. And we'll see this in an illustration on the next slide. But if you remember from our earlier lectures, the prefrontal cortex involves working memory. And so in top-down attention, there's some input from working memory that is influencing what you attend to. So here's a simple illustration of a type of task. So in these tasks, here's a subject, and they're instructed to attend to objects on their screen. In this bottom-up stimulus-driven side of the figure, the participant is just supposed to respond anytime they see a shape. So it could be anytime they see a circle, anytime they see a square. So a shape appears on screen and they just quickly respond as quickly as they can. Sometimes referred to as a simple reaction time task. Now this is in contrast to what's going on in this figure. So in this side of the figure, the participant is still seeing objects appear on their screen. However, they are told ahead of time, only respond to a certain type of object, or they might be told, do not respond to a certain type of object. So for example, they might be told, do not respond if you see a square on screen. So if they see the square, they don't want to press, or they might be told something like, if you see a square, press the square key. If you see a triangle, which there's not one shown here, but if you were to see a triangle, press the triangle key. So this would be a choice reaction time task. And this is requiring some working memory because not only are you perceiving the objects, but you have to select your response or inhibit your response. So selection and inhibition are processes that occur in working memory. So this task is going to be a slower task. It's going to take a little bit more time than the other task. Finally, to wrap up with where are attentional networks in the brain, we think about visual attention, the processing of visual information. Obviously, this begins with the eyes, but it's going to pass along to your visual cortex. And your visual cortex is located in your occipital lobe. So if you orient yourself to this figure, your eyes would actually be here, and visual information is passing all the way to the back of your brain, so all the way to your occipital lobe. And in your occipital lobe, where your primary visual cortex is located, is where we begin with the attentional processing of stimuli.